The Intellectual Gentlemen's Club.
Welcome back to the IGC, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jason Abbott. Want to thank everybody again out there for checking out the website, our social media, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you may find us out there. Thanks for discussing online and shooting our stuff around. I love seeing favorites and likes and shares, things like that. It helps me feel like what I'm doing here is actually getting out to somebody just besides myself. But I have to admit, this is for selfish reasons. I get to have these cool conversations with people. So thanks for tuning in out there. If you want to support what we're doing, head over to the website at intellectualgentlemensclub.com. There's a support page there. You can check us out with our PayPal link. We have affiliate links for Amazon.com, Audible.com, and Onnit.com. Anything you click through that portal gets us a little cut, and it costs you nothing additional. So it works out pretty good. I always encourage you to, if you have any extra money, to give it to my previous guests or the guests that are on today. They have a couple of cool projects that are working on. But if you have anything left over there, more than willing to take the assistance to help cover the hosting costs and things like that. So thanks again, guys. Today, back, we have EJ Snyder. He's returning from episode 13. He is a U.S. Army vet hailing from North Carolina. He's an adventurer, actor, survival expert, and he was featured on Discovery Channel's Naked and Afraid, Terror in Tanzania from the first season. How you doing, EJ?
Hey, I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me back. Always like being out here on the IGC and sharing what's going on in my life and talk with other great people. So I'm really happy to be back. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I'm a busy guy. I got a lot of stuff going on.
It's good. We're hoping to hear some about that stuff. Other guest today is Forrest Galante. He is a biologist specialized in herpetology. He's living in Santa Barbara. He was a survivalist showcased in Naked and Afraid, the second season. I believe it was the pilot, or not the pilot episode, but the first episode of that season. It was in Panama. He was an adventurer, a spear fisherman, a diver, a backpacker. Over 14 months, he backpacked in 26 countries, starting up a new website devoted to travel and cuisine, it looks like. And you may find him on a rugby field on Saturday afternoons. Forrest, welcome to the show.
Jason, nice to see you. EJ, always a pleasure.
Hey, Forrest, what's up, buddy?
How are you guys?
So we're here to talk about Naked and Afraid and other experiences that you guys have had. Growing up as a kid, how did that shape you, Forrest? Take us back a little bit and how you guys started in adventure. Was this something that was a lifelong passion, or was this something that had blossomed over the years?
Absolutely. Well, I had an extremely unique childhood. I grew up in the Southern African bush in Zimbabwe. My parents were both game guides and ran a safari camp. So, and I lived on a farm. So when I wasn't in school, I was either out on a farm in rural Zimbabwe or in the absolute heart of the bush, growing up around the safari business. So whether I had I really had no choice in the matter. From a very, very young age, I was, driven headfirst into outdoor adventure and safaring. And, as opposed to taking the route where when I had a free day, sit inside and play video games like most kids would have, I did the opposite. Even then, when I still had a free day, I'd put myself even further into the bush and really grew up, barefoot out there and just loved it from a young age.
Cool. And what type of experience did you have? I saw in your profile, you were in a boarding school. How did that type of transition come from living in the bush and being able to be outside every day? Was it in that same type of area? What was that experience like?
Well, I went to a very interesting school. I went to a school called St. John's College in Harare, Zimbabwe. At one time, St. John's was considered one of the 7 best schools in the world by the English boarding school standards. It was a very strict, very formal, all-boys collegiate preparation school. We went to school from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m., 6 days a week, and then, Monday through Saturday, and then Saturday afternoons was rugby, and I've kept that up my whole life. And so very strict, very formal, uniforms every day, houses, prefects, boarding school. It was really a very controlled, restricted environment. So I really found that being out in nature and being in the bush gave me an outlet where, every choice I made was on my own shoulders, and there was nobody yelling at me or barking down my throat to do this or do that. It was really up to me and my own survival. And, being in that type of situation, it was very controlled, but it was also its own form of survival, because there, where we had prefects in Harare, they were allowed to administer corporal punishment, which is, something American schools haven't ever even heard of. And so were the teachers, and so was the headmaster. So, that was one form of survival. And when I escaped,
how did that work out?
Well, I was.
Were you at the other end of that at all?
I ventured on both sides, but I was a bit of a naughty boy. I always pushed my limits and boundaries, and there were a few times the prefects got me. I recall one instance where they grabbed me and threw me in a rubbish bin and rolled me down a hill into the school fish pond. But
that's prison time here in the U.S.
Right. It was very, very, very serious school, but I did enjoy it, and like I say, that was one form of survival, and the other was being in the bush. So just a very different childhood to most people in the Western world, but something I thrived on. And what was really sad, or maybe what shaped me, I'm not sure, is as you grow, in that schooling system, you gain more power and respect. And then when you're the equivalent of a high school senior there, you have control over the younger students, and it's a never-ending cycle. Well, I got pulled away from Zimbabwe in my second year of high school, so I never even got the power and control side of it. I just got beat up and bullied kind
Bummer,
of thing.
dude. That's a bummer.
Yeah, but that's all right. I'm not exactly the kind of guy that likes to pick on kids anyway, but it was definitely an interesting childhood.
Interesting. You say you left Zimbabwe your second year of high school. Did that have anything to do with Robert Mugabe and the dollar crashing and everything kind of going downhill over there?
That's exactly right. We were farmers on the outskirts of Harare, and the president dictator Robert Mugabe, for those that don't know, gave the order in 2000 that any land owned by white farmers was legally allowed to be seized by black war veterans. The things that they don't tell you, at the so-called war veterans from the war 25 years prior, some of them were 14 years old. So I don't know how they managed to be war veterans, but whatever it was basically just unruly, unemployed locals with guns. And
snatch and grab.
It was a snatch and grab type of thing. It was the ZANU-PF supporters, which was their political party. And, a lot of people don't understand. They think it was like a black versus white kind of thing. And it couldn't have been anything further from the truth. We had 200 loyal employees that worked on our farm, and they were all native black Zimbabweans. And their children were my best friends. One of their mothers was my nanny from a very young age. I loved her just as much as a mother, and I had to watch some of them get gunned down and shot, and they stood by us till the very, very end.
Jesus, man.
Right, which was one night literally escaping with 3 suitcases of clothes and a few $100 US and jumping on a plane at 2 a.m. to get out of there because it got very hairy.
Holy shit, man. I'm sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, very different, but it's something that's definitely shaped how I've lived my life. And boy, I've never been through a culture shock like leaving that kind of environment and coming to somewhere as relaxed as Southern California.
Right. Wow. Yeah, that's a pretty intense experience, man. I've never been through anything like that, and most people in this world haven't. Well, I shouldn't say in this world. I'm accustomed to living a Western lifestyle in a suburban area. We don't see that shit around here, and I think people, by and large, get complacent that we do have it really easy. You want to hear about the 1% of the world? Well, we're pretty well up there. If we're in America and you're driving a couple cars around and having a house and food in your belly, you're living pretty good compared to in the world. But that's really a shame, man. That had to happen. Where did you guys go from there? I mean, did you go right to Southern California?
Yeah, it was tragic. And what was very difficult is we tried to hold out until the bitter end. And during that time, trades embargo was put on Zimbabwe. So all of our money, which was in Zimbabwean currency, which still existed at the time, we could not remove from the country. So I went from living in a fairly, in a fairly affluent family in a nice home, on a big farm, etc., to like I say, in 24 hours, packing 3 suitcases of clothes and leaving absolutely everything behind, being all, as a kid, toys and dogs and cars and boats and the house. And as I say, my parents are safari guides, so the bush planes and the business and absolutely everything. And when we got over to the States, we were political refugees and we were on welfare. We had no choice. And we first of all settled in Berkeley, California for a few months, where my mother, sister, and I all stayed in a little tiny 1-bedroom like studio loft. And once the welfare process went through, things got settled and we started working on getting money out of the country. And it was really a long, drawn out process. It took us about 8 years from when we first arrived back in the US to actually reclaim some of our things from Zimbabwe and try and settle down and have more of a normal life.
Wow, that's incredible. Did you experience a lot of bullying when you came over? Not knowing what the culture was like and things?
I did not experience any bullying as far as I was considered.
Okay.
When I came from St. John's College, where, well, what they call in America bullying, we just call prefects. But
right, yeah.
From where the kids literally could beat you up kind of thing, and nobody said anything about it, to the States where, I mean, you really can't get away with it here. You know what I mean? I mean, there were bigger kids, I got in a few punch-ups and things like that. But to me, that was kind of everyday life in Southern Africa. And, I'd laugh about it. And here, it all get broken up. And, I'll tell you a funny story. Some of the culture shocks are ridiculous. Like, for instance, I was first, one of my first days I went to school, I took my pocket knife with me to cut my fruit for school. I had an apple in my lunchbox. And, it was like my third day of school in the U.S. And sure enough, I'm sitting in the middle of the quad, no friends, this scared, lonely kid with this straight up haircut from Southern Africa, and cutting my apple, and 2 policemen show up and put my hands behind my back. And
oh my gosh.
And I have no clue what's going on.
You're branded a terrorist, right?
Right. I'm literally clueless. I don't understand what's going on. And, so I go to the principal's office. They tell me I can't have a knife at school. For me, I don't understand why, because I've had a knife in my lunchbox ever since I was 2 years old, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, they go through that drama. Then I get put back into back into school. And some of the older kids are like, oh, you think you're so tough, you bring a knife to school. And I'm like, no, I don't think I'm tough. I have a knife for school. It's for cutting fruit. And it's like, they start with that kind of picking on me. And as we did in Zimbabwe, I was like, come on, look, if you're going to have a shout at me, let's go around back and have a punch up. And, then you can see who's tough and who isn't. And, it's very different in America. In Africa, even the teachers said, well, oh, look, you have a conflict with this student. Why don't you guys go sort it out outside and come back in? And from my best friend to my so-called worst enemy in grade school, we'd go out back, we'd put on the boxing gloves, have a punch up and shake hands afterwards and go back to school. Where I did that, I kind of offered the same thing, keep in mind I was a cocky 14-year-old. I offered the same thing in the U.S. And next thing I know, there's 6 high school seniors jumping on my back and they're all clobbering me and, and then they're spitting on me and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? This isn't a nice civilized fight. And, I
right.
Get up, kind of chuckle with the bloody nose and go to shake hands and they're all swearing and jumping around. And I was like, whoa, this is not what I'm used to.
EJ, how do you feel hearing that stuff? I know that you're pretty well on the activist train as far as anti-bullying campaign. How do you feel about the differences in culture as far as bullying is?
Yeah, it goes back to the, just not knowing, the lack of communication and understanding between the different cultures. And I can see where that, you come in, it's almost like you're a Martian from another planet in some cases. And, bullying comes in all forms and you see it on all levels and by all kinds of people. You think when you're done as a kid that bullying wouldn't follow you, but then you wind up in a job and there's a boss there that's using his position of power as a bullying technique,
Sure,
So, that's why I signed on to this project. Initially, I was approached just to be a talent and tell my story about my bullying days as a kid. And it's just so near and dear to my heart, I decided to sign on as a co-executive producer for the project to help in any way I could and be a voice for it. And that's what I mainly do with it is get out there, and I'm trying to get in schools to speak to kids about it. And I'm starting that this year. But like I said, it's a very busy year. But I remember as a kid, you wouldn't think a guy at 6'3", 240 pounds like me with a nickname Skull Crusher to ever get bullied. And it's true. I was bullied. And it got to a point where I started learning how to box and wrestle, and got in a good weightlifting program. Then started taking self defense, and just took me to stand up to about 3 kids one day, all attacking me at the same time, and in a good hard stance, and bulked up and got bigger, and then I was no longer the victim of a bully. I became a survivor of a bully. And the jungle I grew up in was a lot different than Forrest. It was a concrete jungle of the city mean streets of North Jersey, just outside New York City. So that's a different type of survival. It's a jungle, and where I grew up in through the 70s as a kid, growing up in tough Italian neighborhoods, it was either you defended yourself or you were going to get your lunch money taken. So
is that how it really was, Forrest, or these prefixes or these people at the boarding school, were they more of just give you a hard time? But I can't. What you're describing to me is more in like good fun, like maybe not good fun if you're on the receiving end of it. However, as far as there's an understanding, like this is how it works.
That's exactly
and
right.
It's not so dangerous. We're not going to beat the hell out of you. We're not going to put you in the hospital. We're not going to torture you mentally on the internet or something like that. It was just like, let's just get it handled. Do you see Americans as kind of like, I don't know, taking just the easy way out, or do you see us as like?
Well, I can't say that I see Americans as one way or another, but the way that I see it is where I grew up in Africa, it wasn't bullying. Nobody would ever give it that nickname. It was just, it came full circle. When you were a lighty, as we called it, a young guy, you got picked on and you got, knocked around. And as you got older, you gained more respect. And, if you were better at rugby or chess or cricket or something like that, you got that respect quicker. But, it came with age. And as you got older, you then started basically picking on the littler guys. And, it was a full circle, but it was all, it was more of like a hazing in a fraternity than it was, pick on somebody and ruin their life, if you will.
Did you was that basically the status quo, or did you see anybody kind of standing up for the little guys at the same time?
No, you wouldn't dare. It didn't work like that. It was like, It's a respect thing, something that you don't see in America. Like, if 4 of the older kids came up and said, oh, you little bugger, you shouldn't be doing this. Even if I had a friend who was bigger and could have beaten all of them up, he never would, because it's out of respect. They've got through their 4 years of school and they're in their senior year. And it's, like I say, it's cyclical, and it's not something that you see as bullying. Whereas here, it's like, I'm going to beat somebody up and take their lunch money kind of thing, like EJ just said. I mean, nobody would ever beat anybody up for their money. It wasn't like that. It was just a purely, I'm dominant over you because I'm older and bigger. And as they graduate and go on, then it's the next year's turn.
And that's the thing that I see going on in our society is we're becoming softer and more PC. And unfortunately with that, people forget, like I grew up in the military. When you came in, you were a young, brand new private, in the 82nd Airborne, they called you a cherry because you had a, brand new red beret on your head. And it was part of entering into the brotherhood. Those hazings, those harassings are all done in fun and to build camaraderie, and people lose sight of that, how powerful that can really be. And they mistake it for, hey, they're bullying, they're harassing, they're abusing these guys. And people just don't understand. Again, it's a cultural thing, anything from South Africa to America, from civilian to military. And there's just certain things I've done in the military that people that have never been in the military or been around anyone in the military will never understand.
Yeah, I can see that. There's things in the world where everybody's got like their own thing that they do. And some of us have more intense ideas of what's fun than others. Like Forrest, you're into spearfishing and survival. EJ, and your survival and, acting and doing stunts and things like that. I recently did skydiving and, took up Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So the three of us kind of have that that drive to get a little bit more juice out of action, I guess. But I think that when you get into those like more combat-oriented sports, things like that, there is a tendency to run into more hazing. Whereas, if you're seen as somebody who's in you don't ever hear like the science club getting, hazed, by one another. I mean,
Right.
We're in university like that, and you're into different things, and it comes on many different levels, not just cultural, not just the type of activity you're doing, but it could be down to individuals as well. So, what kind of people are in that group and all that?
Yeah, there's just such a big difference between, malicious hate and aggression and, giving each other a good rouse, even if it's a bit harmful. It hurts. Don't get me wrong. You end up with bruises and bangs, but there's a big difference. It wasn't malicious. You know what I mean? And that's what you see. I think EJ would probably agree with me. That's what you see with kids here. And I think one of the reasons is because kids aren't allowed a physical outlet and they're not allowed to bully. I mean, even American football, and God forbid I say anything negative about American football, but in a whole 2-hour long game, you get a couple minutes of contact. It's not a very good outlet. And the whole objective there is to hurt somebody. It's not just, get the ball from A to B or something like that. So I feel like there's that aggressive outlet for young boys is not well represented in the U.S.
Yeah, I think that I was talking with a couple guys from my gym who were on a previous podcast, and we were discussing, outlets like that. And, I've talked to multiple different people where they think it's a good idea, myself included, to have martial arts included in curriculum at school. And I'm not talking just about physical, but about mental ways, how you should behave and things like that. You don't see any of that addressed in schools. You see the reading, writing, arithmetic, you have gym. But in gym, you're covering like jump rope and, there's cool activities like archery and things like that sometimes as you get older. But they don't focus really so much. They just want kids to move around a little bit. But I think I put my son in martial arts the same time we started with jiu-jitsu, and he's really enjoyed it. It's been a great outlet for him because you see these kids. I mean, if you're a parent and you got, a kid, there are balls of energy. They have to have these outlets. And if you don't give that to them, they're going to find other opportunities to kind of be mischievous, I believe. So I'm full agreement. You have to have those outlets.
And part of that too, like we're dealing with in the documentary I'm doing, is that, the bully's the other guy. Just because there's people being bullied, we can't forget about the bullies themselves. What is that kid going through, or that person in their life to cause them to do this? There's always two sides to every story, and you may find that guy has no one to reach out to either. And so we don't want to let anyone get left behind. And, so we're going to reach out on all levels to help conquer bullying. And it's just like the hidden bully I'm dealing with as well, which is a lot of people in my life, we lost to cancer. So I kind of consider cancer a bully in itself. And I'm trying to kick that one in the keister. And I've joined with Reality Rally for 2014. It's really founded by Jillian Larson of Survivor out in Temecula, California, and we're raising money to fight cancer, and I consider cancer a bully. So I'm trying to help raise funds to fight cancer in a good way, and those are, bullying and cancer are two of my passions, and then the last one would be drugs. I'm against drugs heavily.
Oh, is that right? What kind of drugs? All drugs, or?
When I say drugs, I mean the kind that are used illegally into recreation ways.
You talking about hard narcotics then?
Yeah, very hard narcotics. I mean, I myself, drugs have their place for use for, healing people and doing those things. I try to do without them, but, you can't always get away from that. But hard narcotics, illegal drugs, those that are dealing with them, dealing them out there, everyone's up and, hey, look, we got pot stores down in Colorado now, thinking it's a great thing, but sometimes they say too much of a great thing could be a bad thing. So everyone, to each his own. I don't condemn anybody or condone anybody for what they're doing. I just know for me personally, I lost two very good people in my life to drugs, many to cancer. And it's just one of those things that every chance I can go to fight against it or speak on it, I do.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's, I know quite a few people that have had experience with family members that have been hooked on drugs. I myself have, known people in the family that have had their issues and things like that. I do think that there's definitely a place for drugs in the world, whether you want to call it. The line between drug and medicine is such a kind of a loaded line that this is a different conversation altogether, though. Forrest, what got you into travel grub?
Sure. So I'll give you the abbreviated version, Jason. During college, I started a small business. It was an outdoor education business called Adventure Science, And when I graduated from college, I sold that. I sold my car. I sold my boat. And I'd saved up for 3 years, took off with a backpack and hit 26 countries. It was an incredible experience. I did it with my college girlfriend and now fiance. And we had an amazing time. And as well as an adventurer, spear fisherman, etc., survivalist, I'm a bit of a foodie. And I remember sitting in Thailand, about to travel to Laos the following week with my girlfriend and saying to her, "Oh, I wonder what Laotian food is like. I wonder what we should eat when we get there." And so we went online and Googled Laotian cuisine, Laotian food, and two things came up. Blogs came up where one person would say, "This is what you should eat. This is what I ate. This is what was good. This is what was bad," and cookbooks and recipes. And it really didn't give me the answer, which was, what's the best, what are the must-try dishes in Laos? Um, So after some thought and concept development and 3 years of research, I put together Travel Grub. And so Travel Grub is that one place. It's the one place you can go and, say you pick Laos from the map, and then you can sort it by meats or sweets or dairy or everything. We'll list every dish that Laos has to offer, and not restaurant. It's not a TripAdvisor or a Yelp. It actually will list the names of the dishes. And travelers, just like myself at the time, or both of you gentlemen, can go in there and review and say, "Oh, I had this dish and this was excellent and this was terrible." And you can find it at street carts, or you can only find it in high-end restaurants. And it creates a ranking system for ethnic dishes worldwide and really identifies the must-have dishes in any ethnic place you go. And so that's something I've been working on lately.
And what's the website? Just travelgrub.com?
www.travelgrub.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you were on your travels, we were talking about cultural differences earlier. What did you notice as far as religious or spiritual beliefs traveling, over this 14 months? You have a year and you see all these different countries. What are some of the primary differences that you ran into as far as people's spiritual beliefs?
Oh, well, the list goes on and on. Keep in mind, I'm a scientist from a scientific background, so religious and spiritual are not, I don't notice them very well, for one, and for two, it's just not an area of study of mine. But at the same time, there's certain places you go, areas in Indonesia, for one, like Bali, where everybody is so spiritual and sort of enlightened by their own ways of thinking that it's hard to avoid it. And it is beautiful. And a lot of places it's very peaceful, other places it's very violent, and everything in between. It's hard to say one difference I noticed, because, the difference between where I'm sitting in California and where you live is completely different. Never mind here in, Southern Africa or Australia or New Zealand or the South Pacific or any of the others.
I'm looking at your picture through Skype here, and you're in the river and you have a giant anaconda or some kind of big python wrapped around you.
Yeah, that's right.
What got you involved in herpetology? What drove you to reptiles and amphibians?
So as a kid, and being in the bush and living on the farm, a lot of the times when my parents were out hosting safaris, I kind of had to stay around camp, because a 10-year-old kid can't go walking around the bush by himself. He'll get eaten by something. And
that would be a problem.
Right. And the thing that I could do was catch the creepy crawlies that were near to camp. And same thing on our farm. We had a lot of cobras and mambas and boomslangs and other things like that. And that might be a bit of the background, but really the answer is just that I absolutely love reptiles and amphibians. And ever since I was a little kid, I've just caught everything I can with my hands. And at one point I had 11 aquariums in my bedroom with venomous snakes in them. And
my mom was happy about that.
Yeah, no, she wasn't too keen on that. But it's just a passion of mine. It's something I love. And that picture that you see of me with the anaconda, I'm very into conservation, and that's not something I'd ever harm. That was a snake I went and caught. We measured and photographed and released a beautiful old specimen from the Ecuadorian Amazon. And it's just a hobby, a lot like fishing. You go out, you try and catch something, and you get the thrill of catching it, and then you let it go.
Gotcha. How did that serve you in Naked and Afraid?
I wish I could tell you that served me really well, because there were times where everybody was miserable and I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go for a walk and look for a snake. But it rained 19 of our 21 days. And reptiles, that they're not too keen on the cold and the wet. So I found one snake the whole time, and it was a little vine snake, and I just played with it for a bit and let it go. But the one thing that being a herpetologist and a biologist and a diver taught me is to be very, very observant in my surroundings. And so, I can attribute a lot of my success on the show as a hunter-gatherer to that. I was able to go out, and I'd be looking for snakes or lizards or something fun to catch, and I'd realize, oh, I'm walking in an area that, some wild fruits that I can identify from my biological background are growing, and these are edible, and then I collect a whole stack of those, and you know what I mean? It's kind of all connected with the outdoor education.
Sure. EJ, how did you, you were dropped off in Tanzania. You didn't know much about the area. How did your skills serve you as far as getting food and, like Forrest talking about hunting and gathering type stuff?
Yeah, the bigger problem with Tanzania was it was the dry season, and it was the most unresourceful place I've ever lived or been at in any of my military experiences or any of my survival adventures, because I couldn't even make a G-string to cover my keister if I wanted to. It was that bad. In the lower Serengeti, when we started out, people are like, well, why didn't you make shoes? That would have been my first thing right off. Well, what you didn't see was, yes, we tried with the bark, but what happens is all the water drops down into the roots out there to go to survive the dry season. And so it wasn't until we got to the water hole where the trees were acting more normal, where you could actually get some bark that was pliable to make shoes. And
it wasn't dust, basically,
yeah,
pulling it off.
I'm an ace tracker, so I seen tracks all over the place. The problem was, the animals you're trying to hunt are very large in most cases, and they see you coming from way away, and you're walking around stomping either barefoot and getting thorns in your feet, or you're moving in these very slow-moving bark shoes, and you can sit all day long if you want. The bigger game knows you're there. They know you don't belong in that area, so what I thought would be a lot easier made it very difficult out there because, thank God Kelly was there because she was a little bit more wise on plant identification and understanding plant edibles. I know the edibility test, but, I'm a Neanderthal. I need meat. So that was my big concern. That's what I was striving for. But she was very good about finding a little bit of plant life, a little bit of root life that we could eat that we learned before we got out there. And that was very helpful. But we didn't have a whole lot to eat out there. For the record, I lost 55 pounds out there, not like the show says 33. It was, thank God Kelly came up with a crazy fishing technique because otherwise – I don't know when it was we were going to eat protein because that little mongoose we got later on was not that big of a meal. So, in the end, we wound up pulling 19 catfish out of that water hole. And once we figured out how to catch them, I adapt very quickly. And I pulled the majority of the catfish out of there to help us eat because once I figured out how we had to do it and the water was receding, it was getting a lot easier. Credit goes to Kelly for figuring out how to get that done.
Now, I know that neither of you really had great dining experience on Naked and Afraid. Do you think that the producers of the show purposely put you guys in areas where it was going to be extra challenging? I know some of the places were like impossible, like the Louisiana swamp. They couldn't catch a break with it being, wet. Forrest, you guys dealt with it in Panama. How do you guys feel like they could have dropped you in a better area or a worse area? How do you guys feel about where you were at?
I thought our area was great. Hey, yeah, it sucked. I wouldn't like to go back to Panama in the middle of the rainy season, naked and afraid, or on a bloomin' vacation because it just dumps with rain every day. But especially the first beach that Cassie and I were on, and that general area in Panama was full of resources. Great edible plants, lots of fish, shellfish. The ocean was very utilizable when it wasn't too stormy or too dirty. Palm trees and coconuts, which are just bounding with resources. I really have no complaints about where we were. If it wasn't for the bugs, the cold, and the wet, it would have been a bloomin' holiday. Let's
talk about partners for a minute. I know, Forrest, you probably had an earful already, but now you guys had much different experiences. If you guys haven't seen, first of all, Naked and Afraid is a reality TV show series. I think it's like the real reality, not like a fake-ality TV show where these people they go in the wilderness for 3 weeks with no clothes and one item each, and they try and make it there. It's on Discovery Channel, so you can check that out. EJ, when you're on the first season, everybody had a partner of the opposite sex. And like you mentioned her name, Kelly, she was really good. You guys worked well together. There, obviously, with 3 weeks, you're going to have some tiffs, and you're not going to see eye to eye on everything. But I think you guys got along pretty well.
Yeah, the thing with us was we were a working pilot, which people, we were episode 2 on the series, but we were the very first ones out there, and so we had a lot of extra pressures. It was every day they had to send stuff back to Discovery to make sure the show was going to stay and be part of this this great thing that is Naked and Afraid. And so what I found out quickly is I'm a take charge guy. I got 25 years of military experience, about 23 years of it sitting in the foxhole with soldiers leading them. So I'm just naturally, that's just who I am. I just take charge and enforce my will on everybody. But Kelly and I were two opposite people. She was a free spirit adventurer. She was a very strong woman. She had her own views about how women should be viewed out there in survival situation, which I admired. The thing was, we were just not syncing, and it got to a point where, thankfully my years of military experience came into play, and I noticed that, I've got to figure out a way, yelling at her like a private was not going to be successful. So I was like, what do? I'll just deal with her on her level, and we'll just get down in each other's hearts and speak our mind and figure out if we can put this to bed and get out of here the same way. And we did that successfully. I've built thousands of teams in the Army over my career, and given most of the times, the people that nobody else wanted or the misfits or whatever, and I pride myself in it was a team challenge in my book. Would I have done it on my own if I had to? Yes, but it would have been immensely more difficult, especially with the isolation piece, not having anyone to talk to. But two, it was just the mission was 2 people, 21 days, man and woman, finish it. And that's what I was really hell-bent on making sure happened.
Do either of you think, I mean, obviously you have a lot of respect for the Discovery Channel by putting you up on the show and all. Do you think that there was any fuckery involved in any of the episodes, as far as, like, you see it all the time, like exposés about this show, the producers have everything set up, everything's kind of choreographed. Was any of that going on? Do you see any evidence of that, or was it legit, just as you see?
Not at all. Not for me. Maybe EJ had a different experience, but for me, I somewhat expected it to be more staged, more set up, something, and it couldn't have been anything further than that. I mean, it was literally, here you are, you're in the naked, do your thing, and we'll film you. And that was it. Like, it was nothing. And I was really expecting at least like some direction or some guidance or something. And for us, it was just, all right, here you are, figure it out, we're going to film you.
I'm actually really glad to hear that, because it's becoming increasingly difficult to, when you're watching television, to see what is bullshit and what is legit. So I'm glad to hear that.
Going into it, knowing it was a reality show and a survival show, I thought, oh yeah, they make it look hard, but I'm sure they tell you, oh, you do this, and they tell you, oh, it works like this, and it just wasn't the case. It was just, here you go, you're in the bush, do your thing.
So no hotel rooms in the middle of the night, right?
I mean, the 4 Seasons was nice when we were there, but it was filled up, so we had to go to the Super 8. And no, I'm just kidding. No, we had nothing. It was absolute as is seen on TV.
And I will tell you, Naked and Afraid is the most real survival challenge going on out there right now. That is what it is, and it tests people to the core for going out there with just one item each, a carry bag each, and some cameras, and really they match opposites against each other, and they put you in this situation, and it's like, here's where you are, there's where you got to go after 21 days. You better be there or miss the boat and or helicopter, and it really is you see these shows, and I will say that it is entertainment, but it is people going through something very real, and you may learn something through it.
Sure.
But some of the other survival shows are more geared around teaching the audience, entertaining the audience. And so I'm not saying that I'm not accusing anyone of falsity or fakery or anything like that. But, I understand where the public would see a show and say, well, where did that snake just happen to pop up all of a sudden, or this pig? And I don't know. I'm not there, and I can't say for sure. But I can say for sure, Naked and Afraid is the real deal. It's not for the faint of heart. If you're sitting there on your TV, in your chair watching the TV or behind your computer and you're armchairing us, you know what? You better think twice. If you think just traveling around the world is going to give you, I took a couple survival classes when I was down there
right?
rowing down the river. I'm good at this, or I can backpack, or I can go out there and camp. It's not the same damn thing. I mean, I'm a big proponent. If you have the will to survive, that is your best asset, and you'll make it through most situations. Skills are nice. They make life better, and it's good to have them. But, it's just people that sit there. I got a problem with these YouTube darlings that get on the YouTube, and they put these survival videos out there, whatever, and they're well-rested, well-fed. They're sitting in their backyard. They got the right materials, and they're making these great videos and telling how great they are. But can you do it when it counts? When you've been up for 3 days and you've been getting drenched and you're cold and you haven't had a thing to eat and you're dehydrated, that's when it matters.
Yeah,
and that's what I pride myself in, being the guy that can take it anytime you give it to me. I'm the guy you can count on at the end of the days. If when the zombies start popping up, I'll be there by your side picking them off, man.
Fair
because enough. I pride myself in being, that hard, that stubborn. I was ready to chop my leg off to finish this thing. I didn't care. When I start something, I don't tap, I don't quit. I'm basically going to have to die before I give up on one of these things.
I wanted to give
touching on what DJ said there is something that I've seen on the show, not during my experience, but from watching the show and other reality survival type shows. You have a lot of these guys and women that are theoretical survivalists, like EJ says, YouTube darlings. They've read the book, and with the 2 perfect pieces of wood they can start a fire, and with their $200 made bow they can kill a rabbit. But that's not the case when you're starving, tired, hungry. And just because you've read the book or done the homework, if you're not a practiced outdoorsman and survivalist, it really is a challenge. I mean, I was even eye-opened by the fact, because I'm not a true survivalist. I'm much more of a all-round outdoorsman. And, I'm thinking, I can catch anything, and I'm so good at this. I go on these trips for 10 days at a time without any communication. But, I have a pillow, and I have a sleeping bag, and I have clothes on, and I have shoes on, and you know what I mean? It might not be much, but it's little things that you don't have any of. And those creature comforts that you have, like, a pillow or a fire starter, that you become accustomed to, you don't realize how necessary they are until you make do without them.
And I'll just say one more thing. I'm a professional survival instructor. This is what I do for a living. It can be kind of insulting at times when people, they come out and they say, well, yeah, I'm this. And I do this this is my life. And I just, it's what I do. And I'm not knocking anybody else that goes out there and doesn't do this for a living, but I take it very seriously. I'm a mantra. I wear a mantle, and I understand I'm a role model. And when I'm on these challenges out there on TV, impressionable people are watching me. And if I teach them a practice that I would not do out there in a survival situation myself, they would emulate and possibly hurt themselves, I'm responsible. And I don't take that lightly. And people that do really, I've got a problem with. There's certain things I'll do when I'm out there by myself, certain risks I would take because I'm only jeopardizing my own situation. But when you're with another person or people, you have a responsibility to them to do things the right way. And sorry, I'll get off my soapbox, man.
It's all right. It's all right. Getting back to the partners real quick. Forrest, you did not have a good experience, I didn't think, with your original partner there, and that was very clear. Like right off the bat, I'm like, "Whoa, what is going on? What's with the chemistry between these two?" And it almost seemed like the show. I don't know how much skewing they do or whatever, but it seemed like they were making it look like you were just kind of a hard ass, and she just wanted to relax a little bit, and you were giving her a hard time. But it became very clear very quick on what exactly was going on, that you knew what you were doing out there, and she was there just to kind of lounge around, and she thought world travelers were gonna bring her food and water and everything and be pampered on. And I don't want to bash anybody. That's not what the IGC is about. But I think it's very thankful I think it was probably very helpful when you ran into your second pair, Manu and Russell. It seems like things got a lot better for you at that point.
Oh, absolutely. And you know where it was the most helpful, and not knocking anybody's skills, because both Russell and Manu are incredible outdoorsmen or people or whatever you call it. But
Sure.
the way that I think it was the most helpful for me was having an outlet. I had Russell to then
Right.
I had Manu to bitch and moan to. They could bitch and moan to each other, and it sounds terrible, but I was very frustrated with Cassie, my original partner, and having Russell there. I think it took me about 5 minutes of alone time with them to be like, "Oh my God, please
Thank
hear
God.
my story. Let me vent for 10 minutes." And he did, and at least I know actually he did it without judging, which was really big, because coming in, meeting somebody new in that stressful situation, especially when they had such a positive relationship, and then hearing me be like, "Oh, I'm struggling. My partner's a headache." And
Like, oh, he's bitching, right? This guy's just a pain in the ass. Or what?
if I was Russell, that's exactly what I would have thought. I'd say, "Who is this guy? Why is he so whiny? What the hell?"
They soon found out why.
Right. Well, our three mentalities were definitely in sync as far as survival went. So but just having them there, they were like a great support network. And then on top of that, they were, incredible outdoorsmen with great sets of skills. So it was great. Having those 10 days through made a big difference to my mood.
So EJ, if you could do it again, would you rather do 2 pairs or would you rather have it just how you did?
I think 2 pairs would be interesting, but the way I am, it's militant all the way, and it's going to be like, I don't know if they want to stay in formation then, because once I got a fire team like that out there, I got to get them all in line, do a wedge, let's do a police call at the camp, because I'm OCD, so everything's got to be neat and all that. But he's exactly right. I think the experience with 2 people is just something that's very testing. If you have other people to vent to, it helps a lot more, because now you're not just a team of 2, you're almost a little community.
Oh, but most definitely.
Yeah. And in any case, the first thing when you go out to these situations, you have to be honest with yourself. What am I strong at? What am I weak at?
Right.
Then you look at your partner, and they better be doing the same thing. And then when you talk to each other, you have to be honest with each other about those same things. If you're not, it becomes a problem. And until you talk about that and fix it, it's going to cause you some issues out there. And you got to be on the same page.
One of the things, and I don't want to knock Cassie either. There's plenty enough of that out there already. But one of the things that I think I struggled with so much is Cassie told a very good story about how good she was at all this stuff and how much experience she had.
Like EJ was just saying, right?
Well, I don't know if she was just saying it or if she really, truly just didn't want to do it. It seemed to me like she was just saying it. But it would be so frustrating, especially, day 3. And she's like, "Oh, yeah, every time I've ever tried to make a fire, I can make a fire." And I'm like, great. To me, that sounds
Can you please do that for us then, please?
Exactly. And then it's like, all right, well, you've told me that 20 times now. Would you mind doing it? And then it was like, I was the asshole for asking that. And it was like, I was very confused, you know what I mean? And it led to a lot of frustration for me, because it was like, yeah, I can do it. And I was like, okay, great. You've told me. Now, would you mind doing it? And then it's like, well, how dare you challenge me by saying, can I do it? And it's like, well, I'm not challenging you. I just really want to fire. I'm cold.
Right. It has been 3 days.
Yeah, exactly. So it was frustrating. And my hat's off to EJ, even though his partner from TV standpoint seemed great, but my hat's off to him for doing it as a couple, because I think that is more challenging than as a group of 4.
Well, I appreciate that a lot.
The objective is the same with 1, 2, 3, 4 or more people, but the workload is then divvied up by 4 as opposed to 2.
Sure. I mean, when you're hunting, you got to catch more if there's 4. You're talking about community. Like, you guys had these mini communities for 21 days. EJ, you dealt with a 2-person community. Forrest, you dealt with a 4-person community. And, what's to be said about modern day? We've talked about it on the podcast before here. Modern day with all the social media and everything, what is the size of a community do you think is legitimate that one person can handle? Do you think that people are able to handle millions of people, or do you think there's something to said about that magic number about 150?
I know it from a leadership point in the military, you can only influence X number of people. And then you don't try to give anyone more than about 4 or 5 maybe even I would say, in some cases, I've had as many as 7 folks right underneath me, and they may have had, several hundred underneath them, but there's always these sub leaders, so your sphere of influence is rather small in who you directly communicate with, but that is the important thing, is the communication. And that's in like direct leadership of folks underneath you. Now, when you're reaching out to social media, shoosh, I guess you can reach out to millions of people. I would love to have millions of followers on my Twitter and my Facebook fan page, please. But and I would try like hell to reach out that many people. I don't know if that answers it, but I know from a military structural point, I was a first sergeant of a 140-man rifle company, and I had 4 platoon sergeants underneath me who each had, 30 or 40 other soldiers underneath them. So, and for them, they had, each squad leader had 10, and in each squad leader there were 2 team leaders, and they each had 4 underneath them. So, it's kind of a pyramid situation,
Let me rephrase the question then.
Okay.
If and this is really a totally different question, but if you were going to be like a long-term naked and afraid, say there's a world ender, zombies are everywhere except this one area, right? How many people do you think a one community like that could handle?
Well, I think there's a very delicate balance, as can be seen with, ancient cultures like
the
Mayans and things like that. At some point, in some regard, more is better because there's more people to, get along with. And especially, going back as a biologist, genetically, there's more people to intermingle with and breed with and start a new population, et cetera. But it's also very, right. But it's also very easy to overexpand, go Easter Island on it, overutilize your resources and wipe each other out because of it. So there
kind of what
is
we're doing right now globally, right? I mean,
yeah.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, no, I think we're absolutely Easter Islanding ourselves.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. EJ is the one with formal training, but I think as far as a leader standpoint goes, it's just up to the individual.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I could lead hundreds and thousands, but people have. I mean, the argument could be made that Hitler was an excellent leader. He was an excellent leader. He might have stood for terrible things, but he was an excellent leader.
You got people in line, right?
I mean, he was extremely influential. People did what he said, and so have many of the other big dictators in world history.
And it really comes back to communication. If you can communicate your message, leadership's about motivating others to achieve an objective in a team manner, in a unified manner. And that goes with communication, influence, charisma, and with the right leader, depending on how many folks he can easily control. I mean, with larger groups, then there's always the chance that somebody wants to be at the top, and then you have infighting. So for me, I like threes, the law of threes for me, and I like the number 300. I think 300 Spartan warriors like myself, all like-minded thinkers, are the ones I want to be around when bad times go. It's enough people that are the people I'm talking about are people that are just like me, that know how to defend themselves, handle weapons, handle themselves, are resourceful and reliable, and we have the same mentality. And I'd rather have 300 good men underneath me than 600 blaming idiots, that couldn't put 2 rocks on top of each other, let alone try to make something useful out of it.
That's a lot more problems. Yeah.
Yeah. There's an old saying that 10 men wise and led better than 100 without a head, and that's where I try to influence myself around that philosophy.
Let me throw a question out there for both of you. What do you think is the best measurement for success? I mean, both of you don't strike me as like dudes that are trying out there just to get rich. You're enjoying life. You're doing what you want to do. You're taking challenges on for reasons outside monetary reasons. So how do you guys measure success?
Well, for me, it's just that, as you just said. I mean, I follow my passions and dreams, and that can be anything. For some people, their passion and their dream is to be rich. For me, it's to spend a lot of time outdoors and having incredible adventures. And I'm also a strong believer in, do what you love and the money will come kind of thing. So for me, it's just kind of following my dreams of adventure and travel and excitement.
I have the same philosophy as far as you do what you love, you never work a day in your life.
Right.
I was fortunate as a kid. I had a dream of being an actor, And when that did not come to fruition, because I didn't have money I grew up in a poor family to pay for college and whatever, I got to be a soldier, which was my other dream. And I got to do that for 25 years, serve the country. I've been to 2 different wars, the 91 Gulf War and Operation Iraqi Freedom, and, had a great life doing that, was able to take care of my family. But I'm living proof. I just turned 48 years old a couple months ago that even at 48, you don't have to stop living. You can chase your other dreams, which for me now has become, I love survival. I live it. I breathe it. I'm an adventurer. I want to teach others, and I want to get to a point in life where I can help, inspire others and influence others with whatever is going on in life. And for me, success is, keeping a roof over my family's head, keeping them fed, keeping the lights on, and doing what I love, making a little bit of cash. I don't want to be rich. I think experiences are much more wealthy. A man that's lived his life. When I go into the ground as a corpse, I don't want them to say, man, that's a good looking corpse. I want them to say, man, that dude rode himself hard. That's what I want people to say at my funerals. Like, wow, that dude lived every minute of his life. And I will not stop doing these things until God says you can't do it no more. I'll probably have my son push me in a wheelchair when I'm 90 through the Amazon jungle or out in the middle of the Australian outback. Probably by that time, we'll have floating wheelchairs on hydrofoils or something.
I'm sure you'll figure out a way to bust yourself up from that. So
of course, I always do. I'm a clumsy Neanderthal.
Oh man. Well, why don't you, EJ? I'll give you the first opportunity to shout out your latest projects. I know that you mentioned a couple of them, but why don't you give us a synopsis where people can find you?
If you go to my website, www.ejsnyder.com, I made it a lot easier for folks to find me. You go there, there's a lot of links and a lot about what I've got going on. As I said, I'm part of the Reality Rally 2014. You can Google it up. Go there. We're collecting donations to fight cancer, for charity. And it's a great cause. And you can look my name up and feel free to go there and donate for the cause under my behalf. And I'll proudly represent you at this year's 2014 Reality Rally as the first ever of my Janier survivalist adventure to go to it. It's got a lot of other people there. Secondly, I am helping produce a anti-bullying campaign film, which we hope to get into schools throughout the country by the end of this year, if not 2015. And you can look us up on Facebook. The project's name is Broken Bones, Shattered Dreams. Go to our Facebook page, like it. You can find out a lot of information about that project going on. And you can Twitter me at EJ Snyder 333. And I'd be happy to have you come follow me. And I get at people all the time, answer a lot of questions there. I've got a lot of projects. I'm being sought after to come on to a couple other survival shows and host, so nothing formal to announce yet. But just keep your eyes open. I think you'll see me real soon. And don't forget, Season 2 of Naked and Afraid is going to be huge. You don't want to miss it. If you miss it, you're going to be around the water cooler on Monday saying, what the hell did I miss? Because it is going to be huge. This season promises to be tougher areas than before, a lot more surprises, and a lot of unexpected things are going to go on this season. So don't miss it.
Set your DVRs, people. Forrest, how about you? I know you've been traveling around a lot. You're making some appearances. You're doing some diving, some spearfishing. What do you got going on out there?
Yeah, lots of stuff. Lots of stuff. If anybody wants to stay in touch, the best spot's probably my Facebook, which is just my name, Forrest Galante. I'm working with a great spearfishing company known as Sturgill Spearfishing. They've picked me up as their sponsored diver. We're developing new adventure gear, and actually just the other day, 2 days ago, we launched our line of adventure trips where I'm going to be guiding and hosting people on dive charters to some really remote and exotic places, the center of the Sea of Cortez, the out islands of the Bahamas. We got things coming up in Zanzibar and Australia. So just a lot of fun, cool, unique adventure trips that are featured around the water, as that's my specialty. And probably the most exciting news regarding those trips is Manu Toigo, the other woman from my episode, and I have teamed up to lead the Bahamas trips, where we'll be camping on a deserted island, teaching island survival, and then going in the water with pole spears, a very primitive hunting tool, and killing our own catch and collecting fish, lobster, and conch. So some really fun trips coming up. Otherwise, as we talked about, Travel Grubs, a lot of fun. I continue working on that, and I've got the Skype and the Twitter and the Facebook and all those things as well. So stay in touch with me there, and I am all over the place.
Cool. Well, if I'm ever in your neck of the woods, or you guys are ever in my neck of the woods, let's do a camping trip, gentlemen.
Most definitely.
Be an awesome time.
Yeah, I'm anxiously waiting the thaw here. It's the beginning of March here in Detroit. It's cold. It's bleak. I did my winter expedition. That was back in February. That was fun. Did a few days out in the cold tundra. That's always fun, camping in a tent. Looking forward to doing that every year. But this summer I want to get out and get in the woods a little bit more and maybe get a little more primal.
Good. Well, Jason, anytime, and not that I think EJ needs a lesson, but anytime you want to come out, offers extended to EJ as well, and you guys want to go dive with me and see the California Channel Islands, it's an open invite.
Oh man, you know great, I love the water after living in Hawaii all those years, so I am a waterborne, gills behind the ear kind of guy, and anytime I can work on primitive stuff, I'm really trying to embrace that side of me. I'm trying to. I am a military survivalist and self-reliance guy, but the primitive thing, Tanzania just opened up the inner beast in me, so I'm always trying to hone that skill.
Yeah, it's fun. It is fun.
Very good, gentlemen. Well, thanks again for joining us. Appreciate your time. I know everybody lives a busy life. I'm just glad when I can get everybody like this together and shoot the shit and see what everybody's got going on and give it out to the people. So I hope everybody enjoyed the episode. If you guys want to check out the website, again, it's intellectualgentlemansclub.com. You can see everybody who's been on the podcast. I got a little bit of a bio on there. Every podcast is available for free. There's links to iTunes, Stitcher, Facebook, all of our social media outlets. Click on that support button and check out everybody else's stuff. Until next time, hang loose out there, guys.
Never said I was a gentleman,
Actually,
motherfuckers.